right. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Next Generation Tech Talks. I'm Phil Calzadilla, CEO and founder of NextNet Partners, and we are very happy to host you today. What you hear in the background is RJD2, music selected by our guest, which we will introduce here in a second. I just wanted to say I am so pleased that this is our 20th podcast. We've had quite a few different podcasts, different topics that we've covered over the time, everything from Cisco's new Clicker products and HyperFlex to the way NextNet Partners is implementing maintenance and working with clients, and introduce some of the new folks at NextNet. And so it's been a lot of fun, and we are certainly looking for feedback, and our goal in this whole podcast is ultimately to add value. So let us know, and if you'd like to hear more different anything, feel free to let us know and get us that feedback. And so to meet that end of adding value, we have with us today Mr. Patrick Sliney. Patrick, welcome.
Glad to be here, Phil.
Yeah, glad to have you. And Patrick is a storage industry veteran, and that is our topic today. It's going to be storage. And specifically, he today works for a very disruptive and compelling company called Datrium, and he's a principal systems engineer there here in Arizona. But in the past, he's worked for some very large storage manufacturers. One three-letter one starts with an E, ends with a C, and then another smaller manufacturer that's had a little trouble with their stock, but they're very nimble, and another good company. So you have a lot of great background. What brought you to Datrium?
So the founders of Data Domain that I worked with and were acquired by EMC, we spent a great amount of time together working on next generation storage designs while we were together at Data Domain. We had some amazing visions for some software we developed at Data Domain called Boost about applying host-side processing to storage problems. And when the founders left EMC several years ago and started their own startup, we were all eagerly watching them, waiting to see what they would come out with. And about a year ago, Datrium launched the Netflex and the Hyperdriver DVX system. When they came to me with an offer I couldn't refuse to be one of the first 10 sales teams, I jumped right on it. And I'm very excited by the technology.
That's great, Patrick. Awesome. And it's being very well received out there, as clients are looking at as continuing to virtualize and go deeper and deeper into the stack on, using open source and software-defined data centers and things like that. Talk to me about, where's Datrium's hook into this, and what is it that's so compelling? Because folks are really interested.
Yes. The compelling part of the story is that hypervisor has become the landing spot for so many functions of the data center. VMware calls it the software-defined data center. Cisco has application-centric infrastructure. We've moved network control functions to the host. We've moved security functions to the host. The last bastion is storage controller functions. And so, application data, the closer it lives to the virtual machine, the closer it lives to the application, the better response times we get, the happier our users and customers are. And so our entire thesis of our server-powered storage design is to move that data to the hypervisor where the applications can get the fastest possible access to their data. And of course, the fastest thing in storage today is flash. Everybody loves flash. Unfortunately, the large vendors, the storage array vendors, have to put a significant markup on that flash in order to maintain their margins. Our model is completely the opposite of that. We want our customers to buy their flash either through a partner like NextNet.
Yes, we can do that.
And of course, in the server vendor slot. So, for example, the Cisco UCS, you can buy SSDs from Cisco,
Yep.
And now you have a completely supported design. It's all on the VMware HCL, and we can easily slot those drives into a Cisco Blade and turn an existing Cisco Blade infrastructure into a hyper-converged platform.
That's fantastic. That's very powerful. And customers are really loving this from what I'm hearing from both clients as well as you guys. What are some of the major benefits the clients are seeing right now?
So it's an interesting story. One of the top 5 California K-12 school districts was a customer of ours previously, and now they, in the high schools, use AutoCAD, and they were using VDI to deliver AutoCAD to high school students. Very challenging workload if you've built and sized any VDI systems.
Absolutely.
And the cost of a dedicated array to deliver that was incredible, even from very agile startups.
Yeah, and that's where the math breaks for VDI, right?
Yes.
So VDI, just for those that may not be familiar, that's a virtual desktop. And basically what that means is Imagine being a big enterprise and having 5,000 PCs out there, and each one of those PCs has their own Windows version, and they're trying to patch it, they're trying to manage it. Instead of doing that, you could have 3 or 4 or 5 master images of the desktop, let's say Windows, and you can now, instead of having to manage 5,000 or 3,000 or even 1,000 of these, you can manage 5. And so when you patch, the virus patching and the software applications, and you make the desktops, you can actually allow, you're now just managing and patching and doing 5 versus 5,000, and you're pushing it out, and it becomes much easier to manage, much safer, more secure. There's a lot of great benefits. The problem comes in the economics sometimes, in that what you just mentioned, that it gets very expensive, the per desktop, versus just buying, because cost of laptops and desktops is pretty low nowadays, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that challenge for that school district was that every time they wanted to add a classroom to that VDI project, they had to scale flash on the storage controller, and that is some of the highest cost flash on the market. Instead, we allowed them to use their existing VMware ESX host that they're delivering VDI with, and simply add flash to that. And in that design, they turned 1.5 terabyte of flash into 22 terabyte of cache with the deduplication function that we've built into the driver. And that means they can fit 80 CAD hosts or 80 CAD users on a single host, which is a very high level. They're actually only gated. Their only gating factor is not us or ESX or VMware or the server. It's the fact that they bought the very high-end NVIDIA cards to do AutoCAD, and they can only run 80 of those.
That's great. Card. And they're doing that as a VDI desktop.
Yes,
that's
VDI
fantastic.
Desktop.
That's very, very powerful. Great.
Yep. And so, another customer is a large hospital system in Oregon, and on their initial investment, they were just running 3 ESX hosts attached to the net shelf, and they were able to run about 700 virtual desktops on that. When it came time to expand that, they were able to add just a little bit of flash to each server, and by adding up to 16 more servers, they're able to support up to 20,000 desktops across the entire hospital system. And so that investment is entirely on their side by just adding servers and flash from their chosen partner. They're not sending any more checks to Datrium to do that expansion.
That's fantastic. Yeah, one of the big downsides to virtual desktops is sometimes if you don't have flash, you don't have the right technology on one side, you could have a very bad user experience on the other side, and that kills a VDI project right away because people don't want to use it, and then they go back to their But if you can improve it and reduce the amount of time and delay and everything else to the point where it's equal or better to that experience, which we've done.
Yes, absolutely.
You can certainly get rid of that whole argument, and VDI becomes very powerful.
And it's interesting. There's a physician services, professional services organization that their specialty is delivering better application delivery for physicians' practices. And in their testing with our product, they were actually able to cut the amount of time a physician had to wait to access a record, commit a record after seeing a patient, entering patient notes. And so on their calculation, a physician was able to see 4 or 5 more patients a day and spend less time entering records, or in that same amount of time, spend more time with a patient, because who hasn't spent 30 seconds with their doctor and said, I wish I had 2 minutes.
Yeah, right.
So those kind of changes, not just around VDI, not just around application hosting, but driving real benefits to your customers, right? Who doesn't want to spend 2 minutes with their doctor instead of 30 seconds? Well, they can do that now because they won't have to spend the other minute and a half entering records and notes after the meeting with you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was just at a very large hospital group yesterday, and they were talking about that very thing, about how some clinicians tend to be very focused on what they're doing and less interactive with the client experience. And this would be one of those things, right, where if I'm not messing around with the data I have to enter because it's problematic or slow, then I can pay more attention to the individual who's suffering or having some kind of problem. And that's something that they're really looking at. It's great.
Yep. We want technology to be an enabler, right?
Not it's interesting how people sometimes don't realize that the tech really impacts how these services are being delivered out there, and that's a great connection to make.
Absolutely.
Now, when you talk about this, and and our team talks about it, I hear a lot about the software portion, and it's almost sometimes I feel like, hey, we're just selling the software, right? Because we could use Cisco UCS and we could use the drives there. I mean, talk a little bit about that, off the shelf flash storage and that kind of thing.
There's a completely different paradigm when it comes to purchasing commodity hardware from storage vendors, and what we're trying to do is turn that upside down. It's interesting that at Data Domain, we built an appliance. In reality, that solution was 99% software. It was just a little bit of commodity hardware. And so now with Datrium, we've done the same thing. Our customers always prefer the warm and fuzzies of a mechanical hardware device that they know that that's the location their data is stored in, and it's there for data integrity and performance. And that guarantee of performance integrity is on the vendor, us, Datrium.
Right. That's great.
And so but being software defined, being server powered means that we can add significant functionality and performance improvements to the system without having to rip and replace any hardware that we've delivered the customer. It's all there for data integrity.
It's a big difference in the storage business.
Yes, it is.
They love the forklift upgrades typically, right?
Yes.
That's fantastic. I remember when I first started in this, because I came from the network side, I was just shocked at how much this forklift stuff was happening every 3 to 4 years.
Absolutely.
It's like, let's rip it all out and put all new storage. It was shocking to me because that's not the way the network business works, right? Some people have 6500s that have been out there for 10, 15 years. It's crazy. So it's great. Now, one of the huge things that, actually instigated us having this podcast was the TCO.
Absolutely.
And some of the work that Datrium has done, partners like ourselves on TCO. Let's talk about that a little bit further.
Yeah, so there was a shop in...
And by the way, I'm sorry, TCO, total cost of ownership, for some of the non-techies out there might be listening.
Right. So, the consideration of over the course of 3 years, how much will you spend to initially purchase, support, and then grow this environment over 3 years? And so a 3-year TCO study, and the customer was considering keeping their existing storage arrays from the 3-letter vendors or buying one of the new hyperconverged solutions from one of those promising startups, or simply augmenting their existing environment. And so it's interesting that in so many projects that you and I have both worked in our careers, so many times the decision from leadership is to do nothing.
Yes, that's always an option. Do nothing.
Do nothing.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that we came into this TCO study late, but we're still included. And when we found out that HCI, hyperconverged, was going to have a significant cost because they would not be able to reuse their existing blade and chassis servers. They had to buy an entirely new set of servers and software and licensing to go with it and implementation. They could upgrade their storage array, but again, storage vendors love to make their money on that 3-year refresh. But the Datrium solution was, of course, going to be, we wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't less expensive.
Right.
But the most interesting part of this was that the Datrium solution was less expensive than the Do Nothing choice because Do Nothing still included significant upgrades over 3 years.
Yeah, you still have to. These disks are
costs.
moving.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have to replace them after a certain amount of years. That's why some of the forklift stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well, and for NextNet, that's one of the things when we approach clients, we look at a few things. We look at, hey, what are the requirements that the business needs, and what are the outcomes that we have to deliver to you? Like, for example, 5,000 VDI desktops that work. Not just the engineering deliverables, but making it all work on the other side. So, what are the outcomes? What is the compliance requirements that you have out there? Meaning, security, government compliance, things like that you have to deal with. And then we look at the economics, and we like to do 3 to 5 year. Hey, let's compare what it would cost, these different options, and look at 3 to 5 year costs, whether it's cloud or hybrid or on-prem or whatever the case may be. We can look at that. So that is really a great thing, and you can expect that from us if we're working with you on a storage project.
Absolutely, and that's why we came to partner with you, Phil.
That's great. Well, great, exciting product. Sorry for the little background sound. I
thought it was me.
It was the D-backs versus Phillies tonight.
There we go.
Well, thanks once again, Patrick, for being here. And please look up NextNet Partners. We have about 19 other podcasts you can listen to in the background. Call us at 602-247-8600. Send us an email at info@nextnetpartners.com or check us out on the web at nextnetpartners.com. Thank you.